שלום לכם וברוכים הבאים לשומר סף מספר 182, an English speaking episode right after a word from our sponsors with the incomparable Smith. אם אתם שומעים אותנו בפלטפורמות האודיו ולא נוח לכם באנגלית, בווידאו יש גם כתוביות, והנה מילה מארגמן פלוס שנותנים לנו חסות. אחרי שנים שבהן לימין הישראלי לא היה בית אינטלקטואלי, היום יש לכם בית. אתר הקורסים של מכון ארגמן למחשבה שמרנית, מציעים בפניכם מגוון רחב של קורסים בנושאי ביטחון, כלכלה, משפט, פילוסופיה, והכל מנקודת מבט שמרנית ימנית. האתר יספק לכם הבנה מקיפה של הרעיונות שמאחורי האידיאולוגיה של הימין, טיעונים, נתונים וכל מה שאתם צריכים בשביל להעמיק ולבסס את תפיסת עולמכם. למאזיני שומר סף יש הנחה שלא פחות מ-15%, וזה באמצעות הקופון שומר SHOMER בלינק שאותו תוכלו למצוא כאן מתחת לוידאו. And now it is my pleasure to welcome on this podcast for the third time a person I consider a mentor and a teacher, and including but not only in journalism, Mr. Smith. Shalom.
Gadi, shalom. Thank you very much. I'm surprised actually we're doing it in English. I've been brushing up on my Hebrew, so toda rabba.
Give us your Beseder Gamur before we start.
Beseder Gamur. Yeah, tov meod. I got the whole thing.
Yeah, you got it. You got it. So let's kick off in Hebrew.
Okay.
You know, what is your government trying to do in our country these days?
Well, this is the continuing policy that started with the Obama administration, and so it's the same thing. And now we see that they're inching back into what people are calling I don't know, we want to call it a restoration, renewal of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, and even some people who are supportive of the administration are concerned now that it might be the U.S. might be giving the Iranians more for less. Yes, of course, this is the plan, and that was the plan. The big issue is that after Obama got the JCPOA, his signature foreign policy initiative, Donald Trump came in there, withdrew from the deal in May 18. Right. When Joe Biden came back in and when I guess we can say when Barack Obama came back in behind the skirts of Joe Biden, the plan was to get back in the JCPOA. The essential problem was this. The Iranians were like, well, what do we do if another Republican president comes in and tears up the deal once again, and does something worse, is even more pressure than Trump's maximum pressure? What do we do? Well, the obvious agreement was they were going to have to the Biden administration was going to have to find a way to pass a bomb to Iran. And that's where we are right now. If you see the language about this, it's like, oh, well, they're only going to have enough for, we'll only let them have enough for one bomb or a couple bombs. But actually, by this point, they'll have enough to make 8 different bombs. So that was the plan all along.
So the plan you're saying was to give Iran nuclear weapons. You're saying it's the whole idea that this is somehow a containment measure that would stop Iran from the bomb. So why would a democratic administration want Iran fundamentalist regime to have a bomb?
Gadi, it's interesting because I think we're going to have more. This was a question that all of us were asking, including you, even though we didn't know each other very well back then, but asking around 2015, 2014, 2013, when we saw that this was Obama's major foreign policy project. Why do they want this to happen? And of course, the language all around it was that no, you don't understand. It's going to contain Iran. There's nothing you can do to stop, to blow up the knowledge. So, all we can do is delay it, right? 2 things. First of all, making a nuclear bomb is never about the knowledge, right? You can buy pamphlets on Amazon. I'm sorry if I'm going to be scaring some of your viewers, but if they don't know it already, you can buy pamphlets on Amazon figuring out how to make an atomic bomb, okay? I recommend that your viewers go check out this fascinating article by David Samuels that appeared in the New Yorker about a decade ago, where he was speaking with a truck driver who'd managed to replicate one of the two atomic bombs dropped on Japan at the end of World War II. So the problem is never the knowledge, right? I'm not saying anyone can do it, but lots of people have the knowledge to make a nuclear bomb. The issue is the infrastructure, right? That's the issue. And that's why it's taken the Iranians so long to put it all together, right? Why? Because they're not the Germans, right? The Germans make precision tools, right? Even stuff like a mess, just the basic hygiene, just the way that these labs, the way that these facilities are kept is a very big deal. Right, the Japanese, the Germans, these are people. That's why we say that they're one turn away from getting a nuclear weapon. That's never been true of the Iranians, and the problem has never been the knowledge. It's about the infrastructure it takes to sustain a nuclear weapons program. That's what they didn't have. That's what the Obama administration guaranteed. That's why the garbage about you can't bomb the knowledge was a red herring all along. Here's the other red herring, right? For anyone who wants to understand what the crux of the JCPOA was and what this New Deal is, all they have to do is look at the sunset clauses. Now, what does sunset clause mean? That means at a certain point, the restrictions on Iran's nuclear program go away. Wait, they go away? How is that? I don't understand. It means that it was never designed to stop Iran from getting a bomb. At most, it was designed to make sure the Iranians didn't break out while Barack Obama, or as the thinking was at the time, Hillary Clinton would be in office. It would happen after that period. It was never to stop Iran.
Just to explain, breaking time means converting your civil nuclear program into an actual bomb. Yeah. But in Israel, there's still the whole left wing and the Bennett and Lapid government. I saw from your pieces, you're following Israeli politics in some detail, so you know these guys, and they kept saying, and I think they believe it. Look, the problem is Netanyahu is alienating the administration. We have to reach intimacy with them because then we will tell them, and when they understand how dangerous it is, they will. Flip, they will change and come to our side.
This is why. Well, I think the bulk of our conversation today is going to be about what's happening in the United States right now, and this is why, if Israeli officials were like you, and they were following what's happening in the United States, they would understand the nature of this government, the nature of this particular political faction. So again, this is a question that we had a very hard time answering. Why does Barack Obama want to give a terrorist state the nuclear weapon? Right, that's directed against the Israelis as well as the Saudis, and threatens to destabilize a vitally important region of the world, right? I mean, that's how you control the flow of oil. You can detonate the global economy. So why do they want to do that? Again, that's why it's very important to look around at what's been happening to domestic American society. So if you ask why would a Democratic Party government, why would they want to give Iran the bomb? Well, why would a Democratic Party want to open the southern borders to flood the United States with illegal aliens, right? Why would a Democratic Party endorse what it calls gender-affirming care, which is in fact the mutilation of young children, right? Why would the Democratic Party, why would Barack Obama himself decide to delegitimize his successor, Donald Trump, by ordering his CIA director, John Brennan, to produce an intelligence community assessment alleging that, without evidence, alleging that Donald Trump was helped to the White House by Vladimir Putin? Because all of these things have to be understood as part of a piece, right? There is a logic to it, but the logic is pathological. Right. That's the kind of government we're looking at. That's the kind of faction that we're looking at right now in American politics. And believe me, here in the United States, even people on the right, it's very hard for them to understand what's happening, right? Because it's very painful to believe that this is what's going on. But once you look around and you see these different things, all of a piece, that's what's happening. If you look at how the national security bureaucracy rose up against Donald Trump the president of the United States to topple his government. I mean, this is the hallmark of third world regimes. So that's where the United States is right now. How does it look at Iran? It does not look at Iran as a foe. It looks at Iran as a partner with whom it shares not only interests, but values as well. That's what it means when you have a political faction in the United States that is spying on its opponents, that is using the justice system to put its opponents away. And by that, I mean not just Donald Trump, but Donald Trump supporters as well. So that's where we are right now. And Israeli officials who believe that once they explain better to the United States what's really going on are deceiving themselves. That's not what's happening. This is a very different kind, not just a Democratic Party, but it's a very different kind of political faction operating right now in the United States.
I read your stuff on that, Lee, and I'm not sure I go all the way with you, but I go most of it. And I'll tell you what my take on it or how I try to explain it to students here. The first thing, I took Obama's speech in the Democratic Convention before the last election. If you remember that speech full of dramatic pauses, and he said, everyone in America once experienced this. We were once a minority. We were spat at, we were enslaved, we were insulted, and then the Jews, the Italians, the Irish, the blacks, you said African Americans, I think, and you listened to this speech and you said, well, who is the entity that you humiliated all these people? Who is the evil pole in this story? And the evil pole is America. So in this metaphor, what is bad about America is America. And all these minorities are the victims of America. So in that respect, I would say that Barack Obama is the first real Edward Said president.
I agree. I mean, I've written about the influence of Said on the Obama administration and other figures around him. I mean, of course, it was the famous conversation that Obama had with Said's disciple, Rashid Khalidi, right? Which the Los Angeles Times famously misplaced or lost or won't release, right? I mean, that would be interesting to see. Yeah, but you know what? I'm going to give Edward Said some credit here. I think that Edward Said would have wanted to see the Palestinian polity become more like the United States, rather than have the United States become more like the Palestinian polity. And that's where we are. That's what I mean when I say it's a third world regime suffering from the same sorts of pathologies as third world regimes have. The difference is that this is still, a lot of people on the right here like, oh, they're hemorrhaging American power. We don't have this, we don't have that. The United States is still the most powerful country in the world, right? By far, the military and the economy as well. So this faction is using its power for different purposes, right? It's not to look, many different problems with the George W. Bush administration and the Bill Clinton administration and all sorts of administrations. But this is an administration that is using, as Barack Obama's did, that is using American power to satisfy very different goals. I have to imagine that there must be viewers in your audience. There must be Israelis who, while they're very supportive of gay rights, I think that they must be wondering why it's so important for the United States to press foreign countries on LGBT issues, and why it's very important for the United States to fly the pride flag and have pride ceremonies around the world in places where people aren't as supportive of that agenda.
So one answer to this, Lee, would be that maybe your interpretation is a little too radical, because they would think, they believe that this appeasement toward Iran is actually promoting a form of tolerance and a form of ultra-liberalism, while you're saying that they support the real ideology of a clerical, anti-Semitic, anti-Western regime.
Yeah, because there's all sorts of evidence, including statements of Barack Obama's. There's a very important piece in foreign policy about 7 or 8 years ago by a former Bush administration policymaker named John Hanna, who was speaking with a whole bunch of Gulf officials. I think they were probably from the UAE, though they're not identified in the article. And the UAE officials relayed a meeting with Barack Obama in which he said, what you guys really need is you need a Quds force of your own. You need someone of your own like Qasem Soleimani, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's not like Barack Obama mistakes Qasem Soleimani for a peacemaker, right? He understood what Qasem Soleimani was about and what the Quds force is about, right? It's their expeditionary unit. It's their terrorism unit, right? So I think that there are likely many different policymakers in the Biden administration now, like there were in the Obama administration, who may believe all of these different liberal shibboleths. I think that's certainly the case, right? Just as I'm sure there's lots of Israeli officials now who believe them too. But I don't think that people like Barack Obama or Robert Malley believe them for a second. I think that they understand exactly what the Iranian regime is like. And it's very hard to imagine that Barack Obama was watching the protests in Iran in 2009 and saw what was happening, or saw what the regime.
And then
was
again
doing.
in 2023.
Exactly, and so I think it's very difficult to mistake. Like, well, they're actually decent people at heart.
They're just naive.
Right. I guess they're just well, that's what I mean about the Iranians. But I guess they're forced to shoot young women on the streets. They don't want to. They're forced to be terrorists. But maybe if we give them more money and we show them that the world is okay with them, they'll stop shooting young women in the streets. I don't think that's how Barack Obama sees it all. Or other top officials. No, I think that Barack Obama wanted to promote the oppression of women. Do you think? No. I think that the left in the United States the Western left generally has been infatuated with the Islamic Revolution since the late 70s, right? Foucault famously covered
Foucault,
it. Yeah. I mean, God bless him. Eventually, he turned against it and said, "Wow, this actually looks a lot worse than I thought." Right. So Foucault turned against it. But if you look in the United States, the number of people who still support the Islamic Revolution, right? Why? Because
Judith Butler.
It's anti-American.
Who told
does
us
she? It wouldn't surprise me for a second that she does. Right.
Yeah, she said that Hamas and Hezbollah should be considered part of the international left. These people are just
of course,
off there
because they're anti-American and because they're anti-Zionist, so they're part of the international left.
And of course, the Iranian are world famous for their ironic view of gender. As Judith Butler, they do gender parodies in
gender
interesting
queer, queer. The regime's queer mullahs.
Right? Exactly that. One last remark on this because I can't help myself, and I really want to move to John Durham, but I'll tell you that I think that it is a slippery slope because some of the left, at least in Israel, has this dissonance that they never acknowledge, and I think don't acknowledge even to themselves, is they think they're promoting a state of all its citizens, that they call a de-Judaization of Israel, with an Arab minority in the name of human rights, not making the extra step of asking, when there is a Muslim majority and Arab majority state, will that really promote human rights? Because we don't know of a state like that. So I'm sure there are on the American left people where this is a slippery slope, and they're not all ideologues like the Obama administration.
I think
you should say beseder gamur now.
I'm what should I say?
No, it's not good. You should say nachon.
Beseder. Yeah.
Okay.
Trying to think of what other good Hebrew words are now. Our little boy.
Don't shoot them all at me at once.
Has a stuffed Beitar lion I can't remember who brought it back from. He's got a stuffed Beitar lion. He loves him.
I have to tell my viewers that Rotem and I, when we were traveling to Florida, received on the road a shelter for Shabbat at your home, so we could rest in Charleston on our way to. It wasn't CPAC. Was it CPAC or National?
It might have been. That was a lovely evening.
Yeah. No, it was great.
It was very fun.
Your area is, and your area is
amazing. You have to come back.
We never invite Israelis too often because we have a whole country here that believes in hospitality. But Lee, now that the Durham report is supposed
hold
to
on. Can I just answer one thing?
Sure.
The question that you asked, just one thing, which is this, which I think we need to understand the left has a logic. It's just not the logic you're working on, right? I don't think your logic is right. It's like, don't they understand that if they overturn this country like that, de-Judaize Israel, that the human rights are going to suffer? I don't think they see that at all. I think this is what I mean, pathological. I think it's a very, very destructive thing we're seeing here, and I hope to be writing about this more. But I'm actually writing out a timeline how these sorts of things started in the West. It's a post-World War II thing, not surprisingly. So I think we can't apply this form of logic. There's a lot of there's a lot of one of the things that people hate about Israel, right? That the left hates about Israel, speaking specifically about Americans, is it's not only the strong sense of nationhood, right? That that Zionists have. They love their country. It's also a belief and a belief, a conviction in a natural order, right? And a lot of that has to do with an idea of God, right? Once you overturn the natural order, which is what we're looking at right now in the United States, where things like truth, beauty, and nature have been turned on their head, we're looking at a different kind of order with the reversal of the natural order. And that's what I mean by pathological. So I think that we need to start to understand it, or we need to start to ask questions along those lines instead of saying, well, I mean, we say this all the time on the right in the United States, like, oh, wait, the Democrats are the real racists because of this, this, and that, or the Democrats are the real anti-feminists because they support these men who dress up in women's clothes. Right. That's a normal logic, right? That's how people speak who recognize what natural beauty is, who recognize beautiful art, right? It's not the logic of people who promote pedophilia, or defend pedophilia, or who are covering up for Jeffrey Epstein, or people who or people who believe. Look at what the major donor to the Democratic Party is doing right now, right? George Soros. George Soros is spending hundreds of millions of dollars on races for district attorneys. That what these district attorneys are doing is they are setting felons loose on the streets of America. And you ask, what? I don't get it. And for a long time, my question was, I don't understand. He's a very wealthy man. Is this? I mean, does he want to empty American cities and buy up the real estate for pennies on the dollar? There's no evidence he's doing that. And he doesn't need more money in that way. He can make money any way he wants. The reality is, someone who decides to set loose felons, turn them on American families, is pathological. So that's the kind of reasoning we're looking at here. And I think we need to be pushing it more and more in this direction to answer these questions. Why does Barack Obama, why are they so insistent on giving a terror regime a nuclear weapons program? I don't get it. That's why. And history has not ended, right? Lots of us believe that history ended with the fall of the Cold War or with Adolf Hitler's suicide. Right, or with the Nuremberg trials, history is over. All these things are manageable now. In liberal societies, history is basically over. But look at what's happening. It's not just strange stuff here. Look at the connections. Look at the networks between American elites and Chinese Communist Party elites. Right, this is a regime that's responsible for more than 80 million deaths since 1949, and yet, astonishingly, the American economy, as you will hear them say, as you'll hear Biden policymakers say, well, our economy is intertwined with the Chinese. So, we're going to try to loosen up ties a little bit, but we can't entirely decouple. Or other people say, yeah, we got to decouple for the, to push things, to push away from Beijing. The fundamental point is this: it's a murderous, psychopathic regime. And the idea that the United States could become intertwined with such a polity, it's repugnant. My point again is history has not ended.
But come on. At least they didn't kill Khashoggi.
Yeah.
Some proportions.
Yeah, right. Very good point. So that's my case. I think that's where we need to. That's how we ought to be. That's where we should start asking our questions these days. My suggestion. I'll send you my pieces on it.
I follow you religiously, as you know, and the Durham report is, nobody. It seems that nobody's interested in this topic here right now. But isn't that the final proof of what Devin Nunes has been saying, what your early book has been saying, the plot against the president, and then the permanent coup, and everyone said that this was a conspiracy theory, and it just can't be that the FBI and the CIA under Obama have turned against a candidate to the presidency and then against an American presidency. So what's your reading of the Durham report? Is this anything new?
Yeah, I mean, there are some new things, and there's some interesting details in there. We can talk about a few of them if you want, but I'll just give my larger assessment.
Sure.
Which is this, and that is what we needed. We needed indictments and we needed convictions, because we've seen how the press operates since the beginning of Russiagate. Since Nunes first walked into the rotunda at Capitol Hill and said, "I've seen evidence of spying on Donald Trump's transition team," and that's really what started it off. And we saw how the press attacked Nunes. And we saw all the last 6 years how the press has been defending. They were complicit with the FBI, right? They still are the outward face, the public face of the intelligence services. So it's hardly surprising to me that the press has dismissed the Durham report and said nothing to see here, because a fuller report would describe the press's role and what happened here. We wanted convictions and we wanted indictments, because that can't be explained away by the press, right?
Yeah.
You can't say, if you're at CNN or the Washington Post, you can't dismiss the fact that one of your sources has been led away in an orange jumpsuit, right? You have to explain, what are the charges? What happened? But if it's just a report, I mean, you can basically ignore the report. And that's why I've been saying from the beginning, we need indictments and we need convictions. I don't want a report. I did write a report. I wrote a book. I wrote 2 books, right? Yep. I don't have a gun. I don't have a badge, right? We wanted the prosecutors, we wanted John Durham to come up with indictments and convictions. That didn't happen.
And why didn't it happen?
This is a very good question. A lot of people, let me unpack it a bit. One possibility is that John Durham himself punted, said, yeah, I'm not going to go that far. I never wanted to go that far. I was basically just here to clean up a mess, just to cover this up. That's possible. I think there's evidence that Durham actually did want to get to the bottom of what happened, and he did want to hold people accountable. He did want to hold people responsible. So if he did, then what happened? Now, it's certainly correct to say, well, he's operating under the auspices at this point of Biden's Attorney General, Merrick Garland. So he was obviously limited. And there were the guardrails were very clear, right? There was electricity on this side and on that side. Don't touch this. Don't touch that. It was more like that game. What did we play when we were kids? Operation or something like that.
We didn't have it here.
You didn't have it here?
I'm sure it was more high tech than ours.
You would like it. It's a fun game.
Next Shabbat, Lee.
So,
maybe your child will be old enough to play it by then.
He's not old enough to play it. He's just starting. running through mud puddles.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's a nice beginning. Mud puddles we have here too, although only for a few months.
Yeah.
So you're saying that there's the guardrails on both sides, and the other hypothesis is that he just couldn't under Merrick Garland.
Well, but the guardrails is like, we know that Merrick Garland, or we can imagine that Durham was wary of getting too far in front, or Merrick Garland would knock him down and stop the whole thing. Look, we have to admit
he could stop the whole thing.
Oh yeah, he's sure he could have. I mean, they definitely. I mean, people are saying no, he can't possibly do it. It would create a political scandal. Well, who would have created a political scandal with? Republicans. Republicans have been screaming for 6 years and have got nothing. And Republican House members and senators, Lindsey Graham would have said, "This is terrible. This is unfair." And nothing would have happened. So they certainly could have folded up Durham, from the beginning, right? The minute that Garland came in. But look, the other thing that we have to recognize is that it was that William Barr, Trump's attorney general, played a very big role here. He's played a very big role in going after Trump. And the question is, what kind of limits did he set on Durham's investigation?
Originally, when he was appointed. Just to remind our viewers here that we found out only very late that Bill Barr's FBI was sitting on Hunter Biden's computer from December 2019 and doing nothing. This could have changed the elections, obviously.
Yeah, it wasn't just that. It wasn't just that he was sitting on it. It was under Barr. Under Barr, the FBI set up a censorship task force. And the job of that task force was to make sure that social media and the press didn't report on Hunter Biden's laptop. That was under Barr's. That was while Barr was Attorney General.
Was
and the
that
FBI,
under his explicit instructions, do you think?
We don't know. That would certainly be good to find out. But the fact is that Barr is the ultimate supervisor of the FBI as Attorney General. And it's hard to believe that Barr knew nothing about it. As the Twitter files show, it was a very large task force, right? And they were in touch with social media platforms and the press all the time.
And some of them went to work for the social media platforms. So there was a revolving door there between the two.
That's right. Including James Baker, the former general counsel of the FBI, who a lot of people don't know once worked for William Barr at Verizon.
This is an anecdote that will make you laugh. When I asked a prominent pundit on the mainstream press here who reports on and analyzes the foreign news, and I said, why aren't you saying anything about the Twitter files? And he said, well, the New York Times isn't impressed and neither am I. So these people still think that when they need to check something for truth, they read the New York Times.
Right. Well, I mean, and that's very important, and that's what the FBI under the Department of Justice understands that too. And that's why I think this is something you and I have spoken about a lot, Gaddy, that a lot of people, when they look at the press's coverage of Russiagate, they say, oh, Rachel Maddow, she's crazy and she was so bad. They talk about CNN or MSNBC. The two media pillars of Russiagate were the New York Times and the Washington Post. Yeah. Right? America's prestige press organization.
Well, they got a Pulitzer from themselves.
Exactly. Well, I mean, that Pulitzer is actually really owing to the Department of Justice, right, who provided all the leaks that those stories, all those illegal leaks of classified information, those stories were based on. So that's what I think. I think, Trump and other people have said that the Times and the Post should return their Pulitzer. I'm like, no, they should just give them the DOJ. That's who deserves them.
There was a whole... This is a new concept. It's the deep throat chorus. They're all singing the same tune.
Yeah. Right. That's what happened. But this shows that the FBI and the Department of Justice understood very well how you get out your message. You don't have to control everything. You control the two central pillars of the media, and that's how you get out your message. That's how you shape the message, because everyone is looking at the New York Times. And so this journalist that you were speaking to, he's just doing what everyone does here as well. It's like, well, if the Times isn't on it, never mind.
But isn't that eroding, though? Aren't they using up their credit of old and just losing the belief of their audience or their credibility with their audience?
No. I mean, there's an alternative media infrastructure architecture that's growing at the same time, and some of that has to do with Substack or even Twitter, Truth Social, Locals. Oh, I should say, by the way, I hope your viewers will follow me, leesmith.locals.com, where I post articles.
Good news. Dave Rubin was just here in Tel Aviv, and I
really?
wish him well. Yeah, Locals is a great idea.
Yes, it's doing. I'm very happy with it. I really like it. So there is an alternative media architecture that's being built and it's growing. Truth Social, Rumble, all these different things. But no, the Times and the Post are still in the center. I mean, look, they're writing for a very specific audience, right? They're writing for the establishment. They've always been establishment papers, but now that we see that the divide in the United States has hardened between the establishment class and the country class, it's as important as ever. They're not really informing them. It's basically talking points usually coming from the federal bureaucracy that are being relayed through the New York Times and the Washington Post. This is what they want people to believe, and it's very, very important that way, because as in any third world regime, you need the elites to all be on the same page. You can't afford to splinter, right? That's the worst thing that happens to these kinds of regimes, when they splinter, when there are different centers of power. That has to be managed. So that's why the Times and the Post are so important. They keep the elite on the same page.
So here's why I'm more optimistic than you are, because there comes a time.
Go ahead. I just want to say I'm optimistic. I'm not pessimistic.
That would make me glad, because part of what I'm saying to my friends here is that we need optimism. We objectively need optimism, because under total despair, no one can really operate. But here's my basis for optimism. This elite once believed in its values. Yeah. Now it is cynical and aware of its own lies. And when you deliberately construct a wall of lies, it can last a while, but in the end, Solzhenitsyn is right. The grain of truth that can't be destructed is what eventually takes the lie apart. And I think they've been exposed so many times. So I think the Hunter Biden laptop story is going to have reverberations. People will eventually read Miranda Devine's amazing book, by the way. Also an amazing human drama. I had her on this podcast here. So now there's half of America doesn't even know there was a story, but it can't be completely walled off from consciousness. So what's your basis for optimism or reaction to mine? Or?
Well, no, I mean, I entirely agree. It's like if we look at the course of human history, that's how it happens, right? Lies are very difficult to sustain, right? These regimes are very, very brittle, right? Yeah. Regimes that are premised on lies and different forms of repression are very brittle, and it's easy to find their weak spots. This is what I try to explain to people. Like, look, we are in, I guess, what we would call a regime condition, right? And you have to treat it as such. You can't look at things as though we're still in a constitutional republic. We're not. What we want is we need these different institutions to go to war with each other, right? We don't want to be caught in the middle of, we don't want to be fighting them. We don't want violence, first of all. We don't want to be fighting them. We want them to fight each other. And that's, of course, what happens under regime conditions. And so whatever we can do to force them against each other is central to our victory. Do I think we'll win? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because as you say, it's brittle, it's fake, right? And it's weak. It's tremendously weak. Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. They will cause lots and lots of damage in the meantime, right? And they'll cause damage internally. They'll cause damage externally as well. And this is what the way we started our conversation was about the Biden administration and Israel and Iran. So they're going to cause an awful lot of damage there. So it's not a question of our victory. It may be a question of when. The main question is the amount of damage that they will cause in the meantime.
So I will risk messing up this Jefferson quote before we go. Only lies need government to defend them. truth can stand by itself. So I'm not as optimistic as Jefferson was, but at least I think here.
Well, look, those guys
right.
had it. I say to people all the time, and I appreciate it. I said we're going to go at 2:45. Let's go in a couple. Let's string it out a couple more minutes here.
Yeah. No, I'm aware of the clock. I know you need to go.
Yeah. Look, whenever I speak to people, whether it's here in our nice house, in our beautiful neighborhood, our lovely family, and our wonderful neighbors, and stuff like this, and people are like, this is terrible. This is like, look, first of all, let's start with this. I mean, some of the times it's been ridiculous. I mean, I'm at a nice bar with someone, or out in Florida or something like that. It's like, it's terrible. I'm like, first of all, let's remember where we are. We're not in the underground. It's not Warsaw. Okay, we're here. We're drinking. We're hanging out with friends. We have our friends. Right. But it is true that people are going to jail. Right. And it is true that these animals are experimenting on children. And it is true that they mandated experimental drugs on people. They didn't give them the freedom to decide what was best for them. So they are animals and they're very dangerous. But our starting point is very good. We have it much better than Jefferson and the founding fathers, right? I mean, those guys were in it. I mean, wow, they took on the most powerful army in the world at that point, and that was a pretty well-run army, right? The British Army was pretty well run. It's not like these boys fled Afghan. It's not the way that our top generals fled Afghanistan under Biden's command. So our that's what I mean. Like our starting place is pretty good. That's one reason again why I'm very, very confident. We have a lot of time. We have a lot of room. We have a lot of very smart people. And you're right. There are more people who are saying like, wow, this whole COVID thing really has me, really reconsidering things. So again, that's another reason for my good cheer. And also that I get to talk to, look,
interesting people around the world.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And this is what I say all the time. Like, we need to have friends and allies around the world to realize what our friends and allies are up to as well. As long as we have these networks, these friendships saying, here's what's going on here, what's going on there, and it's happening in lots of other places in the world. We look at Europe, we see what's going on we see what's going on in world famous capitals, whether it's Paris, whether it's Berlin or London. And so we have our friendships and we have shared concerns and we have shared convictions in liberty and justice. So as bad as it is, as pathological as the people are that we're up against, we're doing great.
So I'm happy to end on this optimistic note, Lee. It's a pleasure to talk with you as always, and I suggest we do this once in a while to follow things.
I'd love to, but every time I asked to come on, you keep saying, "Look, practice your Hebrew, and then come on, and we're going to do the show in Hebrew."
בסדר גמור.
Okay. בסדר.
Thanks, Lee.
תודה רבה.
You have a French accent. Did you know that?
It's not a French accent.
It is a French accent. תודה רבה.
Is it?
Exactly. No, you can confuse people not just with your Hebrew, but with your French Hebrew. Consider that in case you need to escape.
I didn't know when I was in Jerusalem, I remember sitting in a bar and these guys they fed me a whole bunch of words. They're probably not nice words to say.
Let's not try them on our.
They said no, we won't. They said you sound like an Argentinian Jew. I'm like, really? Okay.
Next time we'll speak about your biography, which is also interesting. Thank you so much for your time, Lee.
Thank you, Gadi.
See you.
Shalom.
Shalom.